You did the work. You deleted the toxic people. You set the boundaries. You chose yourself. And that took courage. And it was necessary. But I need to ask you something. When was the last time that you were actually happy? Not just content, not just at peace, actually happy. Sit with that for a second, because here's what I keep seeing everywhere. Unbothered, focused on me, cutting everybody off, protecting your peace, staying in your own lane, proud of being alone, proud of being unreachable, and proud of not needing anybody and calling that growth, right? But here's what almost nobody is saying out loud. That's not self-love. That's self-protection, and there's a difference. And before we talk about who you became now, I need to take you back before the heartbreak, before the disappointment, after disappointment, after disappointment, and that taught you to expect the worst. Before vulnerability got used against you, okay? Before loving freely felt unsafe. There was a version of you who felt appreciated, okay? Who didn't have to armor up just to walk into a relationship. Do you remember when you used to just show up for people? Not just because they asked, but because you were just that solid of a person. Do you remember feeling excited to just bring somebody a surprise or a gift just because, right? And you got so much joy out of giving, okay? It didn't feel like an obligation. It just felt good, right? Do you remember when you used to just give people grace? When somebody had a bad day, snapped at you, and instead of shutting down or cutting them off, you stayed. You sat with them through that. You calmed them down. You became somebody else's peace. Do you remember when you could just love freely? Not tracking who did what. It just felt good to make other people smile. You were the one who showed up, showed out, who made people feel like somebody actually cared. You were the beam of light in the room, the warm one, the loving one, the compassionate one people gravitated towards without even knowing why. That wasn't performance. That wasn't people pleasing. That was just you, okay? The authentic version of you before the world taught you that being that open was dangerous, right? That was your real self-love, right? So what happened? Somewhere between that version of you and who you are today, something shifted, right? And I understand why that happened. Life happened, people happened, pain happened, but I need you to really look at something. That warm, loving, compassionate person that you just remembered, the version of you standing behind this self-love act now is different, colder, more disconnected, quick to cut, block, and walk away from anyone who rattles your peace. And you say that's because you love yourself more now? But here's the truth. You trust less, you give less, and most importantly, you feel less, okay? So I have to ask you what nobody else is gonna ask you, okay? How did you actually grow? Sit with that for a second, because here's the thing, that warm, loving, compassionate person that you once were, that was you actually honoring your self-love. That was the best version of you showing up in this world, okay? But I already know what you're gonna say. That wasn't self-love. That was me serving everybody but myself, right? Being a people pleaser, being a doormat, being taken advantage of. That's why I changed. And maybe you're right, okay? At least about one part. Maybe you were giving all of that beautiful, beautiful energy to the wrong people, okay? I'm not gonna argue with that. But here's what I will not let you do, okay? I will not let you take the most loving version of yourself, bury it, and call that growth, okay? Because self-love is not the absence of love for others. Self-love is becoming the best version of yourself, okay? And your best self was kind, compassionate, patient, was connected. The work was never ever to kill that part of you, okay? The work was to protect it by learning who actually deserves that, right? So what you're calling self-love right now, it's not self-love, it's self-isolation, okay? And there's a difference, okay? And let me show you how it probably started, okay? How it quietly turned into that isolation, because it didn't just begin with you proudly announcing that you're just gonna cut everybody off, right? Okay? It started smaller than that. Maybe somebody said something that rubbed you the wrong way, right? their tone was off, they had a bad day and they just dumped it on you. They said something clumsy that wasn't perfectly worded, okay? And in the beginning, you told yourself, I'm just gonna protect my peace, okay? And you took a little bit more space. You stopped reaching out as much, okay? You convinced yourself that you were better off on your own, okay? Fast forward now, before people even finish their sentence, you're done. No conversation, no clarification, no curiosity, block, delete, gone. And the wild part, you're still calling that self-love. But if that's how you move, I need to ask you something, okay? You probably haven't even asked yourself. If you can walk away from people that easily, what makes you think the people around you feel safe with you? Because the one thing every human being needs to know, okay, is that the person next to them is safe, okay? That they're not one mistake away from being disposed of, okay? Let's flip it, okay? What happens on the day that you have a bad day? When you say something that isn't so kind, when your tone's off, when your patience is thin and you show up less than your best self, okay? Will anybody still be there? Because here's the truth about the standard you're holding everybody else to, okay? You're one wrong move away from losing people who actually love you, okay? One bad day away from being cut off by somebody using the same rules you created. And if you have your scissors ready before anyone even makes a move in that room, then you're not the safe person anymore, okay? You're the one that people quietly feel they have to protect themselves from, okay? I want you to pause here because I see you, not the version of you that posts about unbothered energy and healing errors, the real you, okay? The you who is exhausted from pretending everything is fine. The you who hates that you can't trust people anymore. The you who had to bury the most loving parts of yourself just to find a way to exist without constantly being in pain, okay? And honestly, that survival mechanism makes complete sense, okay? You stop pouring yourself into people who kept leaving you empty, okay? You got focused. You started building something real for yourself. And it's been working, right? You're safer now, you're more focused, and you're accomplishing things you never accomplished when you were busy loving people who weren't loving you back, right? But underneath all of that accomplishment, underneath all of that focus and safety and control, you're lonely, you're empty, and you are suffering in silence because that suffering you feel alone feels better than risking the suffering that comes from letting somebody in and getting hurt again, right? But that's the trade, and that's not sustainable, okay? You cannot build a whole life around only yourself and call that thriving, okay? You weren't designed for emotional solitary confinement because at some point, self-isolation stops feeling like protection and it starts feeling like a cage. So what does real self-love actually look like? Not the version on your timeline, the real version, okay? It starts with honesty, the kind that makes you uncomfortable, the kind where you stop performing healing and you actually do it, okay? It looks like going into every wounded place inside yourself and refusing to look away, naming your triggers instead of pretending that you don't have them, right? Understanding why you shut down, why you explode, why you chase what's wrong for you and run from what's right from you, okay? It looks like telling the truth about what actually hurt you, not so you can stay stuck there, but so that you stop silently bleeding on people who didn't cut you, okay? It looks like learning the difference between a red flag and a bad day, okay? Between a toxic person and a flawed person, between someone who is dangerous to your peace and somebody who's just human, okay? Because not everybody who disrupts your calm is your enemy, okay? Some of them are just mirrors showing you something that you haven't healed yet, okay? It looks like setting the boundaries that are clear without being cruel. I love you, but I cannot keep doing this. Instead of everybody's just cut off. It looks like taking care of your body and your mind, not as a punishment, but as an act of a deep respect for yourself, okay? And slowly, carefully, with discernment, it looks like letting safe people see the real you again, okay? Not all at once, not without wisdom, but enough to prove to yourself that love is still possible for you, okay? That you can love others without losing yourself in the process, okay? If you're a person of faith, this might also be a moment to invite God into the place that you closed off, to ask for help discerning who's safe, and for courage to open what pain convinced you to shut down, okay? Because that is the real work, not just being alone, being honest, being whole, becoming the kind of person who makes the room feel safe just by being in it, okay? Someone who people can count on, right? Someone who doesn't need a wall because they've done the work, okay? To trust their own judgment about who deserves access. Not the guarded version, not the closed version, the free one, okay? Your frequency is your power. Protect it, feed it, trust it, and be intentional about who you let into your healing, because we rise together, but only when we each do our own work. Until next time, heal loud, guys.